A cook saw two dirty twins and gave them free lunch. He thought they were poor children lost near the restaurant. But everything changes when the millionaire father enters, furious and surprised. Upon discovering the gesture, he makes a request that changes his life. If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us from which city you are watching us. We continue. The rain fell mercilessly on the windows of the small restaurant Yggdrasil, located on a busy street in the city center. Clara adjusted her sauce-stained apron as she organized the ingredients for another day of work. Her agile fingers cut the vegetables with the precision of someone who learned from practice, long before books. The aroma of the stew already filled the room, mixing with the smell of freshly brewed coffee and fresh bread. As she prepared the seasonings for the day's dish, her thoughts wandered to the conversation she had had with her grandmother Talia the night before. The woman, with her white hair and hands wrinkled by time, had suffered yet another respiratory crisis. The treatment was becoming increasingly expensive, and her salary as a cook was barely enough to cover basic expenses. Clara sighed, remembering the yellowed envelope kept in the drawer at home, the acceptance letter for the culinary school she had never been able to attend. The sound of the rain grew louder, and Clara noticed an unusual movement near the back door of the restaurant. Two small figures emerged, soaking wet and shivering with cold. They were two girls, virtually identical, no more than 6 years old. Their once elegant dresses were caked with mud, and their dark hair clung to their wet faces. "Oh my God! What are you two doing here all alone?" Clara exclaimed, running to get clean towels from the closet. The girls looked at each other, a knowing smile playing on their lips, but they remained silent. Clara wrapped them in towels and led them into the small staff room, where an old heater hummed lazily. "You must be hungry," she said, watching. The children's curious eyes roamed the room. Without waiting for a response, she headed for the kitchen and returned a few minutes later with 2 plates and a generous portion of roast chicken. The girls attacked the food as if they hadn't seen a decent dish in days, although something in their manners suggested they were well-mannered. Clara watched them, intrigued, as she prepared 2 generous slices of chocolate cake, her mother's recipe, which she treasured. "What are your names?" he asked kindly, serving the still warm cake. The one who seemed a little more confident replied, "I'm Leona, and she's Gaia." Her sister added, "We wanted an adventure." Clara was about to ask more questions when she heard a commotion coming from the entrance of the restaurant. A tall man, wearing an impeccable suit that completely clashed with the simple ambience of the place, burst through the door. His eyes scanned the room with a mixture of concern and authority. "Daddy!" the girls cried out in unison, and Clara's heart stopped for a moment. The man turned toward the voices, and his gaze met hers. Clara felt as if time had frozen in that moment. There was something magnetic in his eyes, a mixture of relief and curiosity that left her speechless. "Sir, I thought they—" Clara began to explain, feeling her face burn with embarrassment. But before she could continue, the man raised his hand in a calming gesture. "Raphael Müller," he introduced himself, his deep voice filling the room. "And it looks like my daughters have found not only shelter, but also a feast." His gaze swept over the now empty plates and the smiling girls, chocolate remnants at the corners of their mouths. Clara watched as he knelt in front of his daughters, checking to see if they were okay, and noticed that despite his imposing posture, there was a tenderness in his gestures. The girls began to talk excitedly about the best cake in the world they had eaten, and Clara realized that this unexpected encounter had planted a seed of change in her life. What she did not yet know was how profound and transformative this change would be. In the weeks that followed that rainy encounter, Clara tried to return to her normal routine at the restaurant, but her thoughts invariably returned to the twins and their mysterious father. There was something about that family that intrigued her, perhaps the way luxury and simplicity had intertwined on that peculiar morning, or perhaps Raphael's penetrating gaze, which seemed to see beyond their modest appearance. At home, between one dose of medicine and another for her grandmother Talia, Clara found herself remembering the details of that day. The girls had left after many thanks and promises to return, leaving behind only crumbs of cake and a story to tell. Raphael had insisted on paying generously for the meal despite Clara's protests, and had left his personal card, in case she needed anything. One particularly busy afternoon at the restaurant, Clara was busy preparing the special sauce for the day's lasagna, when Mrs. Zaria, the oldest waitress, came running into the kitchen. "Clara, someone wants to talk." "Do you?" she announced, with a mischievous smile on her lips. To her surprise, Raphael Muller was standing at the counter, this time without his daughters. He was wearing a navy blue suit that further enhanced his imposing presence, but there was something different about his posture, a certain vulnerability that Clara had not noticed before. "Mr. Muller, has something happened to the girls?" she asked, concerned. He smiled, a smile that lit up his brown eyes. "Raphael, please. And no, the girls are fine. In fact, they can't stop talking about you and your magic cake." Clara blushed, nervously adjusting her apron. Raphael continued, "Actually, I came because I wanted to talk to you about a proposal." He paused, as if choosing his words carefully. "You changed something in my daughters that day. They were always good girls, but since then, something is different. There are more smiles, more stories at the table." Before Clara could respond, her grandmother's voice echoed in her mind, reminding her that food had this power, to transform moments into memories, to heal invisible wounds. Raphael continued, "I'm looking for someone to be my private chef at home, especially to take care of the girls' meals, and after much thought, I can't think of a more suitable person than you." Clara's heart raced. The offer was tempting. Salary that would certainly help with her grandmother's treatment costs, plus the opportunity to work in a professional kitchen. But there was also the fear of the unknown, the fear of leaving the restaurant that was practically her second home. "I don't know what to say," Clara stammered, feeling the weight of the decision. Raphael smiled again, this time with genuine understanding in his eyes. "You don't have to answer now. In fact, I'd like to invite you to see our house first. The girls would be thrilled to see you again." At that moment, Mrs. Zaria appeared again, carrying a plate. "The customer at table 5 has been waiting for 15 minutes, Clara," she warned, casting a curious glance at Raphael. Clara quickly excused herself, torn between her immediate duties and the possibility of a significant change in her life. "Tomorrow is my day off," she said finally, surprising herself with her sudden decision. "I can come and see your place, and we can talk more about this proposal." Raphael's smile widened, and he took a pen from his jacket pocket, writing an address on a napkin. As she watched Raphael leave, Clara felt a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Her life had always been guided by necessity, by duty, first to her mother, then to her grandmother. For the first time, she was faced with a choice that could change not only her destiny, but also the way she saw herself. The rest of the day passed in a blur, and when she finally arrived home, she found her grandmother watching the soap opera on the small television in the living room. "Grandma, do you think I should take a new job?" she asked, sitting down next to her on the worn sofa. Thalia adjusted her glasses and looked deeply at her granddaughter. "My dear, sometimes life throws opportunities our way that seem scary precisely because they are important. Your heart already knows the answer." Clara hugged her grandmother, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender she always wore, and allowed herself, for the first time in a long time, to dream of possibilities. The Muller mansion was an imposing building, in the city's most upscale neighborhood. Clara, standing in front of the main gate, felt her heart race. She was wearing her best outfit, a navy blue midi-skirt and a white blouse she had bought at a sale, but she still felt out of place in front of that sumptuous architecture. Before she could press the intercom, the gate began to open automatically. A meticulously manicured garden stretched out to the main entrance, where Raphael was already waiting for her. He smiled when he saw her, and Clara noticed that even in his more casual attire, twill pants and polo shirt, he maintained that aura of natural elegance. "Welcome to our home," he said, leading her inside. The interior was even more impressive. High ceilings, exquisite furniture, and artwork Clara had only seen in magazines. But there was something strange about the space, a sense of emptiness that not even all the opulence could fill. Clara. Two joyful shouts echoed through the hall. Leona and Gaia ran down the main staircase, their dark hair swaying with the movement. Before Raphael could scold them for their rush, the girls were already hugging Clara's waist. "Are you staying?" "Please say you are," Leona begged, while Gaia added, "The food here is so boring after your cake." Clara couldn't help but smile, but she noticed a shadow pass over Raphael's face when he heard his daughter's comment. "Girls, why don't you show Clara where her kitchen will be if she accepts our proposal?" Raphael suggested. The twins didn't need a second invitation, pulling Clara through the halls of the mansion with childlike enthusiasm. The kitchen was a dream come true. Professional equipment, marble countertops, an industrial stove that would make any chef sigh. But it was a small detail that caught Clara's attention. An old recipe book, carefully positioned on a shelf, its pages yellowed with age. "It was Mom's," Gaia explained, her voice growing quieter. "She liked to cook it too, but after she left, no one really used it anymore." Clara felt a lump in her throat. Now she understood better that feeling of emptiness. It wasn't just the absence of a person, but of all the warmth that person brought. Before she could say anything, a sharp voice interrupted the moment. "Shouldn't the girls be studying at this time?" A lady of about 60, dressed in a formal suit and with a rigid posture, stood in the kitchen doorway. Her gaze pierced Clara like a blade of ice. "Mrs. Helena," the girls murmured in unison, lowering their heads. "I'm the housekeeper," she introduced herself curtly, "and I've been responsible for keeping this house in order for the past 20 years." Her tone made it clear that she didn't look kindly on Clara's presence. Raphael appeared shortly after, noticing the tension in the air. "Helena, this is Clara, the cook I told you about. She's getting to know the house today." The housekeeper nodded stiffly and left, taking the girls with her, but not before giving Clara one last meaningful look. Alone with Raphael in the kitchen, Clara felt the weight of the decision she had to make. He approached the recipe book, touching it reverently. "Marina, my wife, loved to cook," he said softly. "But since she left 3 years ago, this kitchen has lost its soul. The girls have lost that special time they had with their mother here." Clara looked at the man in front of her, no longer a powerful businessman, but a father trying to rebuild something precious for his daughters. "Mr. Muller." "Raphael," she corrected herself. "Why me? There must be more qualified chefs with proper training." He smiled, that same smile that seemed to light up his eyes. "Because when you fed my daughters that rainy day, you weren't just serving food. You were serving affection, warmth. That's what this house needs, Clara. Not just someone who knows how to cook, but someone who understands that every dish can be an act of love." His words touched something deep within Clara. She remembered her own mother, how she transformed simple ingredients into unforgettable moments. She thought of her grandmother, how she needed this opportunity to secure her treatment. "The salary will be 3 times what you currently earn," Raphael continued. "Besides, I want you to go back to school. I'll pay for your culinary school tuition." Clara's eyes widened, surprised by the extent of the offer. "How could you—" "I did my research," he admitted. "I know you gave up your college dream to take care of your grandmother. It just confirms what I saw that first day. Your character, your dedication." Clara felt tears forming in her eyes, but she held them back. She looked around the kitchen once more, imagining the possibilities, the meals she could prepare, the smiles she could provide. But she also thought of Helena's coldness, the weight of Marina's memory that hung over that space. "I need a day," he said finally. "I need to talk to my grandmother, to gather my thoughts." Raphael nodded understandingly. "Of course. Take all the time you need, but know that the doors of this kitchen, of this house, are open to you." That night Clara could barely sleep. She tossed and turned, her mind a whirlwind of thoughts and possibilities. The small apartment she shared with her grandmother seemed even smaller, as if the walls were closing in around her, forcing her to make a decision. The soft sound of the television came from the living room. Her grandmother used to have trouble sleeping on nights when her breathing was more difficult. Clara got up and went over to it, finding Thalia sitting in her favorite armchair, covered by a crocheted blanket. "Grandma, are you still awake?" Clara asked, sitting on the arm of the chair. Thalia smiled, her kind eyes shining behind her old-fashioned glasses. "I'm waiting for you to find the courage to tell me what's bothering you so much, my girl." Clara sighed deeply and began to tell me about her visit to the Muller mansion. She talked about the dream kitchen, the generous salary, the promise of college. But she also shared her apprehensions, the housekeeper's icy gaze, the ghost of her dead wife, the fear of not living up to expectations. "But what worries me most is leaving you alone," he finally confessed, holding his grandmother's wrinkled hand. "How am I going to take care of you if I live somewhere else?" Thalia sat up straighter in her chair, her voice taking on a tone of firmness that Clara knew well. "And who said you have to choose between taking care of me and following your dreams? Have you ever considered that maybe this is life's way of taking care of both of us?" "What do you mean, Grandma?" "Well, with a better salary, you can pay a caregiver to stay with me during the day, and at night when you get home from work, we'll still have our time together. Besides," she paused dramatically, "it's about time you stopped using that old, sick grandmother excuse for not pursuing your dreams." Clara felt tears streaming down her face, but this time she didn't try to hold them back. "You're not an excuse, Grandma. You're the most important person in my life. And you're the most important person to me too, my love. That's why I can't let you waste an opportunity like this." Thalia picked up a photo album that was on the table next to her. "Look at this photo here." It was an old, slightly faded picture of Clara, about 5 years old, covered in flour, trying to make cookies with her mother. "Your mother always said you had a special gift in the kitchen. It wasn't just a talent for preparing food, it was something more, an ability to transform ingredients into affection." Clara ran her fingers over the photograph, remembering that day. "Do you think she would be proud?" "I'm sure you already are, my daughter, and you'll be even more so when you realize your dream of studying gastronomy." Thalia closed the album carefully. "Those girls need you, Clara, not just your cooking, but your way of turning a simple meal into a moment of love. You know what your mother always said," Thalia continued, her voice thick with emotion, "that the kitchen is the heart of a home. If the heart is empty, the whole house suffers. Maybe that's what that family needs, someone to make the heart of the home beat again." Clara sat back down next to her grandmother, feeling a certainty grow in her chest. "What if I can't do it? What if I'm not good enough?" "My dear, you are already more than good enough. You just need to believe in it as much as I do." Thalia picked up the remote and turned off the television. "Now, how about we make some tea? I'm sure that after a nice cup you'll go to sleep with a lighter heart." Clara's first day at the Muller mansion began before sunrise. After making sure her grandmother was well looked after by her new caretaker, an experienced and kind lady named Donna Karin, Clara arrived at the mansion carrying a small suitcase with her personal belongings and a box with her most beloved kitchen utensils. Helena was waiting for her at the back entrance, her face a mask of formality. "I'll show you to your quarters," she said curtly, leading Clara down a side hallway. The room was spacious, with a small adjoining sitting room and a private bathroom, a luxury Clara had never experienced before. "Breakfast is served at 7 sharp," Helena informed him, handing him a set of keys. "The girls need to be well fed before going to school. Mr. Raphael usually only drinks coffee, but he appreciates a well-set table. Here is the handbook with the house rules and each person's food preferences." Clara picked up the thick-bound manual, noticing that some of the pages had handwritten notes, probably from the previous lady of the house. Helena continued, "And one more thing. This kitchen has history. It's not just any place you're occupying." Before Clara could respond, the housekeeper had already left, leaving a mixture of warning and challenge in the air. Taking a deep breath, Clara unpacked her suitcase and put on her new uniform, a white professional set that Raphael had provided. In the kitchen, Clara began to familiarize herself with the space. She opened cabinets, checked the pantries, and admired the state-of-the-art equipment. Her fingers lightly brushed the recipe book she had seen on her first visit, but she resisted the temptation to open it. It wasn't time yet. She focused on preparing a special breakfast for her first day. In addition to the traditional bread and fruit, she decided to make pancakes with red fruit syrup, a recipe her mother used to prepare on special occasions. The sweet aroma soon filled the entire kitchen. What a wonderful smell! Leona's voice came from the doorway, followed closely by Gaia. The girls, already dressed for school, had bright eyes with anticipation. Clara couldn't help but notice how different they were in small ways. Leona had a small beauty mark near her right eye, while Gaia had a more restrained smile. "Good morning, girls. Do you want to be my assistants today?" Clara asked, handing them small aprons that she had bought especially for them. The twins put on the aprons happily, climbing up on stools to help decorate the pancakes with fruit. Raphael appeared shortly after, adjusting his silk tie. He stopped at the kitchen door, observing the scene with an expression that mixed surprise and something else, perhaps longing. "I don't remember the last time I saw the girls so excited this early in the morning," he commented. Clara served breakfast in the dining room under Helena's critical eye. The table was impeccable. Golden pancakes decorated with fresh fruit, still warm bread, natural juices in crystal jugs, aromatic coffee, and a variety of artfully arranged fruits. "Clara, this is amazing," Gaia exclaimed, attacking her pancake with enthusiasm. Leona had already devoured half of hers, leaving a trail of berry sauce at the corner of her mouth. "Really exceptional," Raphael agreed, sipping his coffee. "It reminded me of—" He stopped abruptly, his gaze meeting Helena's, who stood in a corner of the room like a silent sentinel. The rest of the coffee passed in relative silence, broken only by the girls' excited comments. When they finished, Raphael took his daughters to school, but not before thanking Clara again for the coffee. Alone in the kitchen, cleaning up the breakfast mess, Clara found a folded note under one of the plates. The childish handwriting read, "Welcome to the family. Love, Larry and Gabby." Her eyes filled with tears. "Don't be too quick to fool yourself," Helena's voice cut through her moment of emotion. The housekeeper was standing in the doorway, her gaze fixed on Clara. "I've seen. A lot of people passed through this kitchen since Mrs. Marina left. No one was able to stay." Clara straightened her posture, meeting the housekeeper's gaze. "I'm not here to replace anyone, Mrs. Helena. I'm here to do my job and, if possible, bring a little joy through my cooking." "Mrs. Marina started out that way too," Helena replied, her voice softening almost imperceptibly, "with pancakes for breakfast and smiles from the girls. But this house holds more secrets than you can imagine, young lady." The weeks passed, and Clara began to establish her own routine in the mansion. Her mornings were filled with elaborate breakfasts, which made the twins linger at the table longer and longer, eager to try the new dishes she prepared. The afternoons were dedicated to meal planning and the cooking classes that she timidly began to give the girls. One particularly quiet afternoon, while making cinnamon cookies with the twins, Clara noticed that Gaia was especially quiet. "Is everything okay, Gabi?" she asked gently, helping the girl cut the dough into star shapes. "Clara," Gaia began hesitantly, "did you know your mother?" The question took Clara by surprise, causing her to nearly drop the baking sheet. Leona, who was decorating other cookies, also stopped to listen. "Yes, I did," Clara replied softly. "She taught me almost everything I know about cooking. She was the one who showed me that cooking is a form of love." "And where is she now?" Leona asked, coming closer. Clara took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "She's in a very special place where she watches over me every day, especially when I'm cooking." The girls exchanged meaningful glances. "Like our mother," Gaia said softly. Clara felt her heart sink. She was about to say something when Helena appeared in the kitchen doorway. "Shouldn't the girls be studying?" the governess asked, her tone softer than usual. Perhaps she had heard the conversation too. The twins protested, but Helena was firm. "You can take some cookies to eat while you study." After the girls left, Helena remained in the kitchen, watching Clara clean up the mess from the afternoon's baking. "You're messing with delicate things," she finally said. "I wasn't trying to—" Clara began to defend herself, but Helena interrupted her with a gesture. "Come with me," she ordered, leaving the kitchen. Curious, Clara followed her to a small room on the second floor that she had never noticed before. It was a kind of office with walls covered in photographs. Helena turned on the light, revealing dozens of moments frozen in time. In many of the photos, there was an elegant woman with dark hair like the girls, always smiling. "Marina," Helena whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "She transformed this house when she came in, not just with the food she cooked, but with the love she put into everything." Clara studied the photographs, noticing how Marina was often seen in the kitchen, surrounded by ingredients or teaching the then very young girls how to make cookies. "She also gave them cooking lessons," Helena commented, following her gaze. "What happened to her?" Clara dared to ask. Helena sighed deeply, sitting down in an old armchair. "It happened so quickly. One day she was here, planning the week's jewel menu. The next, the doctors said it was sudden. Raphael never fully recovered, and the girls, well, they were too young to understand." Clara felt tears forming in her eyes. Helena continued, "After she left, Raphael hired several professional chefs. All of them were technically excellent, but none of them understood that this cuisine needs more than technique. It needs heart. That's why you've been so protective," Clara finally understood. Helena nodded. "This family has suffered too much. I can't let them suffer again." "I don't mean to hurt anyone," Clara assured. "I just want to help, to do my job." "Maybe that's exactly why you're different," Helena mused, standing up. "The others came to impress with their skills. You came to nurture with your heart." She walked over to one of the photographs and took it off the wall, handing it to Clara. "Here, I want you to have this." It was a picture of Marina in the kitchen, laughing as she made bread dough with the girls, all covered in flour. "Why?" Clara asked, excited. "Because you need to understand the legacy you're continuing," Helena replied, her voice gentler than Clara had ever heard it. "And because maybe it's time to let love back into this kitchen." That evening, after everyone had retired, Clara returned to the kitchen. She reverently took Marina's recipe book from the shelf. It was no longer just a cookbook, it was a treasure trove of memories, a guide to healing broken hearts. And now somehow it had become her responsibility to keep alive the flame of love that Marina had lit so many years ago. Classes at the culinary school began on a rainy Monday. Clara, sitting in the front row of the auditorium, felt both excited and out of place. Most of the students were much younger than her, fresh out of high school, with their impeccable uniforms and state-of-the-art equipment. "It's never too late to make a dream come true," Raphael had said the night before when he found her studying the course materials in the kitchen. He was right, of course, but that didn't lessen the butterflies in Clara's stomach right now. Professor Beatrice, a renowned chef known for her approach that blended technique and affection, began the class by talking about the importance of taste, memories. "True gastronomy is not just about the perfect execution of a recipe," she explained, "but about the ability to awaken emotions through flavors." Clara smiled, remembering Marina's recipe book that she had begun to study in recent weeks. Among the yellowed pages, she found not only cooking instructions but small personal notes. The girls loved it. A special recipe for rainy days, Raphael's favorite when he's worried. During the break, while other students were grouped together to talk, Clara received a message from Donna Karine. Her grandmother had had a serious seizure and had to be taken to the hospital. Her heart started racing, but before she could panic, another message arrived, this time from Raphael. "Don't worry about classes. I've already arranged for your grandmother to be transferred to the best hospital in town. Dr. Steiner, my personal physician, will take care of her. Focus on your studies. I promise to keep you informed of everything." Clara felt tears well up in her eyes, moved by the gesture. Over the past few months, Raphael had shown himself to be not only an understanding boss but a caring friend. They were small gestures, a word of encouragement here, a sincere compliment there, and now this. Back in class, teacher Beatrice proposed a challenge. Each student should create a dish that told a personal story. Clara immediately thought of the chocolate cake she had served the twins on that first rainy day. But as she developed the recipe, her hands began to work on something different, something that combined new techniques she was learning with flavors she had remembered. The result was a 3-layer cake that she named Rain Memories. The base was the traditional chocolate cake. The middle layer had a soft vanilla cream with spices that evoked the aroma of her mother's kitchen, and the top was decorated with a delicate drizzle of red fruit syrup. "Extraordinary," commented Professor Beatrice after tasting the cake. "There is technique here, no doubt, but there is something more. There is love in every layer. How did this recipe come about?" Clara told her briefly about her work at the Muller mansion, about the twins and their first meeting in the rain. She didn't mention Marina or the recipe book. Some stories, after all, weren't hers to tell. At the end of the class, the teacher took her aside. "You know, Clara, we have an important competition coming up, Flavors That Transform. Participants must create dishes that are not only technically impressive, but also tell meaningful stories. After tasting your cake today, I think you should enter." Clara hesitated. "I don't know if I'm ready, teacher. I still have so much to learn." "Sometimes," Beatrice replied with a gentle smile, "what we need to learn is not in books, but in the heart. And you, my dear, already have a PhD in cooking with the heart." The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity for Clara. Between her college classes, caring for her grandmother, who was fortunately recovering well under the care of Dr. Steiner, and her responsibilities at the mansion, she barely had time to breathe. But it was a good kind of tiredness, the kind that comes with accomplishment. One afternoon, while helping Gaia with her math homework in the kitchen, Clara noticed that the girl remained quiet and distant. "You know," Clara began, setting out ingredients to make cookies. "When I was little, I had trouble with numbers too." "Really?" Gaia asked, looking up from her notebook for the first time in hours. "But you do all those complicated measurements in recipe?" "Exactly," Clara smiled, putting a small apron on Gaia. "Cooking taught me math. How about we learn fractions by making cookies?" Soon the kitchen table was covered in flour, and Gaia was laughingly learning how to halve or double recipes. "So 3/4 of a cup plus 3/4 is a cup and a half," she exclaimed proudly. "Who's making cookies without me?" Leona's voice came from the doorway, feigning indignation. Soon she joined the two of them, and the kitchen was filled with laughter and impromptu math calculations. Helena, who was passing by the hallway, stopped to observe the scene. Her face, usually austere, softened with a discreet smile. "Marina did that too," she commented quietly, more to herself than to the others, before continuing on her way. That night, after the girls had gone to bed, Clara found Raphael in his office deep in work papers. "Excuse me," she knocked softly on the open door. "I brought you some tea. You've been here for hours." Raphael looked up, surprised but clearly grateful for the interruption. "Come in, please. I think I really need a break." He pushed the documents aside, making room for the tray Clara was carrying. "Chamomile tea with a touch of lavender and honey," she explained, pouring 2 cups. "It's my grandmother's recipe. She says it calms the mind and heart." "Your grandmother is a wise woman," Raphael commented, enjoying the aroma rising from the cup. "How is she?" "Much better, thanks to you," Clara replied sincerely. "I can never thank you enough for everything you've done for us." Raphael waved his hand dismissively. "You've done so much more for this house, Clara, not just with the food, which is extraordinary, but today when I saw you teaching Gaia math through cooking, it was as if Marina were here again." A thick silence fell between them. It was the first time Raphael had mentioned his late wife directly to Clara. She waited, sensing he had more to say. "You know," he continued after a moment, "ever since Marina left, I've been really withdrawn. I've been focusing on work, trying to make up for my emotional absence with expensive gifts for the girls. But you've brought life back into this house. You've brought the smell of cinnamon and vanilla, the sound of laughter in the kitchen." Clara felt her heart race. "Raphael, No," he interrupted her gently. "Let me finish. Tomorrow is Marina's birthday. Every year it's a hard day for all of us, especially the girls. They used to make a cake with their mother on this day. After she left, we tried to keep the tradition, but it was never the same. Do you want me to prepare something special? Clara offered, understanding the delicacy of the moment. Actually, Raphael hesitated. I wanted to ask for something else. Helena showed me that you've been studying Marina's recipe book. There's a specific recipe in there, a chocolate cake with red fruit sauce. It was her specialty. Clara nodded. She had noticed that recipe, marked with hearts and the note family favorite. The girls asked if we could make this cake tomorrow, Raphael continued. But they don't want it to be just another cake. They want to participate, like they did with their mother. And they want you to teach them. Are you sure? Clara asked softly. I don't want to seem like I'm trying to take anyone's place. Raphael reached across the table for Clara's hand, surprising her with the gesture. You never tried to take anyone's place. You created your own space in our lives, with your own special kind of love. And that's exactly what Marina would have wanted, for her daughters to continue to have moments of joy in the kitchen, learning that love can be expressed in so many different ways. In that moment, Clara understood that she was not just being asked. She was being given a sacred trust, an invitation to be part of something much bigger than herself. And as she stared at her hand still wrapped around Raphael's, she realized that her heart had already accepted, long before her mind had processed the answer. The morning of Marina's birthday dawned with a special golden light, as if the sun itself wanted to participate in the tribute. Clara arrived in the kitchen earlier than usual, carrying a bouquet of fresh flowers that she placed in a vase on the counter, a small gesture of respect for the memory of the woman who had been the soul of that space before her. Marina's recipe book was open on the table, on the page for the famous chocolate cake with red fruit sauce. Clara studied the notes carefully. Little secrets scribbled in the margins like, beat the egg whites until stiff for exactly 3 minutes, and the chocolate needs to be warm, not hot. Details that made all the difference. Helena entered the kitchen silently, carrying an old wooden box. I found these in the attic, she said, her voice softer than usual. These are the special molds Marina used for this cake. Opening the box, she revealed a set of heart-shaped molds, slightly worn from use and time. Thank you, Helena, Clara replied, touched by the gesture. The housekeeper hesitated for a moment before adding, Marina always said that these molds had a magical touch, that the family's love flavored the cake as much as the chocolate. The twins arrived soon after, still in their pajamas, their faces, carrying a mixture of anticipation and melancholy that broke Clara's heart. Shall we begin? Leona asked, as Gaia reached for her personalized apron. Of course, Clara smiled, handing out tasks. Leona, you can sift the flour with the cocoa. Gaia, let's separate the eggs. Do you remember how we do that? The girls worked with touching concentration, as if each movement were a way of connecting with their mother's memory. Clara guided them gently, sharing little stories she had found in the recipe book. Look at this note from Mom, Gaia said, pointing to the edge of the page. My helpers make the best berry sauce in the world. She was talking about us. Raphael appeared in the kitchen doorway, silently observing the scene. His eyes shone in a different way, as if he was seeing not only the present but also precious fragments of the past. Dad, come help, Leona called, her hands covered in chocolate. Clara said the secret is to mix it with love, just like Mommy used to do. For a moment, Clara feared she had gone too far in making that comparison, but Raphael smiled, rolling up the sleeves of his dress shirt. Your mother always said I was a disaster in the kitchen, but that at least I knew how to taste. With enthusiasm. The morning passed at its own pace, filled with the aroma of chocolate and the sound of the girls' laughter. Clara realized that something special was happening there. It wasn't just the preparation of a cake, but the construction of a bridge between the past and the present, between memories and new moments. When it came time to decorate the cake, Clara surprised everyone by pulling a small package out of her purse. I found this in an antique shop, she explained, revealing a set of small crystallized sugar hearts. In the recipe, Marina mentions that she used similar decorations. Helena, who had been standing nearby throughout the preparation, let out a gasp of surprise. They're exactly the same, but how? I did a lot of research, Clara admitted. I wanted this moment to be as special as possible. The girls decorated the cake with sugar hearts, carefully positioning them on top of the red fruit syrup that ran down the sides of the heart-shaped cake. The result was stunning, not only for its appearance but for the energy of love that emanated from each detail. "It's perfect," Raphael whispered, his voice choked with emotion, "just like she used to make it." Clara noticed that Helena was discreetly wiping her eyes with the corner of her apron. The housekeeper approached her, while the girls and Raphael admired the finished cake. "You know," Helena began quietly, "I spent so much time trying to preserve Marina's memories that I almost forgot the most important thing. She loved seeing this kitchen alive, full of experimentation and laughter. You brought that back." "I'm not trying to replace you," Clara replied softly. "No, it's not," Helena agreed. "It's helping us honor her memory in the best way possible, keeping her love of cooking and family alive." At that moment, as if it had been carefully planned by fate, a ray of sunlight shone through the kitchen window, making the sugar hearts shine like tiny stars on the dark chocolate. The twins let out expressions of delight, and even Raphael seemed touched by the coincidence. "Mom always said the sunlight in the kitchen was a kiss from heaven," Gaia recalled, her small voice thick with emotion. Clara felt her own heart overflow with emotion. There in that sunlit kitchen, amid sweet aromas and precious memories, she understood that she had found much more than a job or an opportunity to fulfill her dreams. She had found a family, a place where her love for cooking could be much more than just preparing meals. It could be a form of healing, of connection, of continuity. The days following Marina's birthday brought a subtle but significant change in the dynamics of the mansion. It was as if an old tension had dissipated, giving way to a new harmony. Helena began to participate more actively in the kitchen activities, sharing old stories and even some recipes that Marina had taught her. Clara, in turn, threw herself headfirst into preparing for the flavors that transform competition. Professor Beatrice had been clear. The participants needed to present not only a technically perfect dish, but a story that would touch the hearts of the judges. One afternoon, while experimenting with different combinations for her recipe, Clara received an unexpected visit in the kitchen. Her grandmother Thalia, now recovered and stronger, had been brought by Raphael for a special tea. "My granddaughter," Thalia smiled, watching Clara work in the professional kitchen. "Who would have thought that little girl who could barely reach the stove would be here today, preparing dishes for an important competition?" "Donna Thalia," Raphael said, serving her more tea, "your granddaughter has a special gift. She doesn't just cook, she transforms lives through food." Clara blushed at the compliment, but remained focused on the dessert she was finishing, a sophisticated reinterpretation of the chocolate cake that had changed her destiny that rainy morning. "You know," her grandmother began in that tone, a voice that Clara knew well, the one that always preceded an important story, "your mother always said that you had inherited your great-grandmother Julianne's gift. She also believed that food was a form of love, of healing." The twins, who were doing homework at the kitchen table, approached with interest. "What was great-grandmother Julianne like?" asked Leona, always curious about stories. Thalia smiled, shifting in her chair. "She was an extraordinary woman. During difficult times, she transformed her small kitchen into a place of welcome. People came from far and wide, not just for the food, but for the comfort they found there. She used to say that every ingredient carried a story, and every dish was an opportunity to tell a new one." Clara stopped what she was doing, an idea beginning to form in her mind. "Grandma, do you still have that old recipe book from great-grandmother?" "Julianne?" "Of course, dear, it's kept with your mother's. Why?" "Because I think I just found the perfect story for the contest," Clara replied, her eyes shining with excitement. "It won't just be about one recipe, but about generations of women who have used cooking to transform lives." Raphael, who had remained silent observing the interaction, spoke up. "Clara, use the mansion's library for your research. I'm sure Helena can help organize everything you need." The housekeeper, who had entered the kitchen silently, nodded, with a smile. "And perhaps," she added, "we could include some stories about Marina as well. After all, she is part of this chain of love through cooking." The following weeks were intense. Clara divided her time between college classes, her duties at the mansion, and developing her presentation for the competition. With everyone's help, she delved into her family's stories, discovering surprising connections between her great-grandmothers, recipes, her mother's teachings, and her own journey. One evening, while working late at the library, Raphael joined her. "How's the project going?" he asked, placing a cup of tea beside her. "It's incredible," Clara replied, showing him her notes. "Each recipe tells a story of overcoming, of love, of transformation. My great-grandmother Julianne used cooking to nourish not only bodies but souls. My mother continued that legacy, and now you're doing the same here," Raphael added, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made Clara hold her breath. "Raphael, she began, but was interrupted by a noise coming from the door. It was Helena carrying an old box. "Sorry to interrupt," the housekeeper said, "but I found something that might interest you." Inside the box were dozens of old photographs of Marina in the kitchen, many of them with the girls as babies. She also believed in the transformative power of food. Perhaps these images can help tell her story in the contest. Clara leafed through the photographs, moved. In one of them, Marina was shown teaching the twins, who were still very young, how to make cookies. The expression of love on her face was identical to the one Clara saw in old photos of her own mother and great-grandmother. "This is it," she whispered, a certainty growing in her heart. "It's not just about recipes or techniques. It's about love that transcends generations, that heals, that transforms. It's about women who found in the kitchen a way to make the world a better place." Raphael gently placed his hand over hers. "And you, Clara, are the perfect continuation of that story. You have not only preserved these memories, but you are creating new ones every day." At that moment, looking at the old photographs, mingling with her notes on centuries-old recipes, Clara felt that all the paths of her life, the moments of joy and pain, the difficult choices and the surprises of fate, had led her exactly where she was supposed to be. The big day of the Flavors That Transform contest finally arrived. Clara woke up before the alarm, her hands shaking slightly as she packed her special utensils in the suitcase Raphael had given her. The sun had not yet risen when she went down to the mansion's kitchen, surprised to find Helena already awake. "I couldn't sleep," the housekeeper explained, pouring Clara a cup of chamomile tea. "Marina didn't sleep the nights before important events either. She would stay here in this very kitchen, rehearsing every move." Clara sipped her tea, feeling her nervousness ease a little. On the counter was her great-grandmother Julianne's recipe book next to her mother's and Marina's. 3 generations of stories and love for cooking gathered together in pages yellowed by time. "I brought you something," Helena said, handing him a small velvet box. Inside was a delicate brooch shaped like a wooden spoon, with small stones that sparkled softly. It was Marina's. She wore it on all special occasions. She said it brought her luck. "Helena, I can't," Clara began emotionally. "Yes, you can," the housekeeper interrupted her firmly. "Marina would like you to wear it today. You're not just representing your own story in this contest, Clara. You're representing all of us, the women, who have found a way to express love in the kitchen." The sound of small footsteps interrupted their conversation. Leona and Gaia, still in their pajamas, entered the kitchen, carrying something in their hands. "We made this for you," Gaia said, handing Clara a colored drawing. It was a lovely illustration. Clara was in the center, wearing a chef's hat, surrounded by other figures. Her mother, her great-grandmother Julianne, as the girls imagined her. Marina and the twins themselves, all in a large kitchen filled with hearts and cakes. "It's the kitchen family," Leona explained proudly. "The teacher asked us to draw our family, and you're part of it now." Clara felt tears well up in her eyes, but they were interrupted by the arrival of Raphael, impeccably dressed despite the late hour. "Is everyone ready?" "For the big day?" he asked, carrying a covered basket. "What is this?" Clara asked curiously. "Breakfast for the champion," he smiled, revealing fresh bread, fruit, and a thermos of coffee. "We can't let our chef compete on an empty stomach." Sitting there, in the still dark kitchen of the mansion, sharing an improvised breakfast. Clara felt her heart overflow with gratitude. A few months ago, she was just a cook in a small restaurant, carrying the weight of postponed dreams alone. Now she was surrounded by people who had become much more than bosses or co-workers. You sure you don't want to go?" Clara asked for the 10th time. The competition didn't allow companions in the preparation area, but the family could watch the final performance. "We wouldn't miss it for anything," Raphael assured her, his gaze conveying more than just professional support. "We'll all be there, me, the girls, Helena, and your grandmother Thalia. I've already arranged for a car and driver to pick you up." When it was finally time to leave, Clara was surprisingly calm. Marina's brooch glittered on her new lab coat. The drawing of the girls was carefully tucked away in her briefcase, and the stories of 3 generations of extraordinary women echoed in her mind. In the car on the way to the competition venue, Clara mentally reviewed her presentation. It wouldn't just be a technical demonstration of haute cuisine. It would be a story of love, perseverance, and transformation, told through 3 dishes that represented her journey. The appetizer would be a sophisticated take on the chocolate cake that had changed her destiny that rainy morning. The main course would incorporate elements of her great-grandmother Julianne's healing recipes, with fresh herbs and spices that she used to feed the soul. And dessert. Dessert would be a tribute to all the women who had inspired her, a fusion of Marina's chocolate cake with the modern techniques she was learning in college. Arriving at the competition venue, Clara was greeted by Professor Beatrice, who smiled when she saw the pin on her lab coat. "Ready to tell your story?" she asked. Clara nodded, adjusting her apron confidently. "It's not just my story," she said. "It's the story of all the women who came before me, who used the kitchen as an instrument of love and transformation." As she organized her workstation, Clara could feel the presence of all of them. Her mother, her great-grandmother Julianne, Marina, like invisible guardian angels. But she also felt the strength of the love present, from the twins with their colorful drawing, from Helena with her special brooch, from her grandmother who never stopped believing in her, and from Raphael, whose eyes seemed to see not only who she was, but everything she could become. The bell sounded to start the competition, and Clara took a deep breath. It was time to transform memories into flavors, stories into aromas, love into culinary art. It was time to show the world that true gastronomy goes far beyond techniques and presentations. It is a way to connect hearts, heal souls, and transform lives. The pageant auditorium was packed, the air thick with anticipation and tantalizing aromas. Clara moved with precision at her workstation, each gesture a carefully choreographed dance. On the other side of the glass separating the kitchen from the spectator area, she could see her makeshift family occupying the front row, the twins holding glitter-adorned signs, Helena maintaining her elegant posture but with a discreet smile, her grandmother Thalia beaming with pride, and Raphael, whose gaze conveyed a quiet confidence that strengthened her. "Contestants, 15 minutes to finish your dishes," the host announced, his voice echoing through the sound system. Clara checked every element of her presentation. The appetizer was perfect. Mini sweet cakes filled with homemade guava jelly, decorated with edible flowers that recalled the mansion's garden. The main course, inspired by her great-grandmother Julianne's healing recipes, was a delicate arrangement of fresh herbs, wild mushrooms, and a sauce that combined modern techniques with ancient wisdom. The dessert, her final tribute, was a work of art, a chocolate cake that, when cut, revealed layers that told a story. The dark, dense base represented her roots, the past, with the special touch of chocolate that Marina loved so much. The middle layer, lighter and more aromatic, symbolized the present, with spices that her mother used to use. The top, a delicate structure of blown sugar in the shape of wings, represented the future and all the possibilities it held. 5 minutes. Clara finished the decoration with precise movements, her heart beating in tune with the timer. Marina's brooch shone under the kitchen lights, like a small beacon guiding her movements. When it was her turn to present, Clara took a deep breath and began to tell her story. She spoke about the rainy morning that changed her destiny, about The twins who appeared in her kitchen like little angels sent by chance. She told about her great-grandmother Juliane, who transformed simple ingredients into medicine for the soul, and about her mother, who taught her that love has flavor and aroma. "Each dish I present today," she explained to the judges, her voice, clear and emotional, represents a chapter in this journey of transformation. These are not just recipes, they are memories, dreams, and promises translated into flavors. The judges tasted each dish with reverent attention. Clara watched their expressions change, surprise at the sophistication of the humble cake, admiration at the complexity of flavors in the main course, and finally, enchantment with the dessert that told a layered story. "Impressive," commented one of the judges, an internationally renowned chef. "You managed to perfectly balance technique and emotion, tradition and innovation. But more than that, you made us feel part of this story." When the moment of decision arrived, Clara was at peace, regardless of the outcome. She had told her story in the best way she could, through love transformed into nourishment. And the grand prize of the Flavors That Transform contest goes to, and the presenter paused dramatically, Clara Steiner with her presentation, Recipes from the Heart, A Journey of Love and Transformation. The explosion of joy was immediate. The twins jumped from their chairs, screaming with happiness. Helena applauded with tears in her eyes, while Thalia was supported by Raphael, too emotional to stand on her own. But it was when Clara stepped off the stage, after receiving her trophy and the international scholarship that came with it, that the most special moment happened. Raphael approached, holding her hands in his. "Clara," he said, his voice low but firm, "you didn't just turn dishes into stories today. You turned our house into a home again. You turned sad memories into celebrations of love and—" He hesitated for a moment, his eyes meeting hers. "You changed my heart in ways I no longer thought possible." The twins joined them, embracing Clara with all the strength of their childlike love. Helena approached, carrying a bouquet of flowers that included the same types Marina used to grow in the garden. Thalia watched the scene with a knowing smile. The smile of someone who sees a dream not only realized, but multiplied in unexpected blessings. Amidst the hugs and congratulations, Clara sensed something special in the air, something beyond the scent of chocolate and spices that still lingered. It was the sweet scent of transformation, of love blossoming in unexpected places, of the second chances life offers when we keep our hearts open. Marina's brooch sparkled one last time under the auditorium lights, as if the former lady of the house was also there, blessing this moment of joy and renewal. Clara touched the small object with affection, whispering a silent thank you to all the women who had paved her way to this point, with love, courage, and many, many recipes from the heart. The news of Clara's victory in the Flavors That Transform contest spread quickly. The small restaurant where she had begun her journey was flooded with reporters wanting to see the place where it all began. Mrs. Zaria, the former waitress, proudly told anyone who would listen about the rainy morning when two little twins had changed the destiny of her favorite cook. At the Muller mansion, the routine took on new contours. The international scholarship that Clara had won included a 3-month specialization course at a renowned gastronomy school in Paris. It was a unique opportunity, but it also represented a challenge for the bonds she had built. 3 months. "Fly by," Raphael said one night. Finding Clara in the kitchen after the girls had gone to bed, she was organizing recipes, trying to decide which ones she would take to study during her stay in France. "I don't know if I should go," Clara confessed, her fingers absently playing with Marina's brooch. "The girls, my grandmother, so much has changed in the last few months." Raphael stepped closer, gently taking the recipe book from her hands. "Clara, when you came here, you brought back something I thought I had lost forever, the ability to dream. I can't let you abandon your own dreams now." "But what if when you come back, you find that your dreams have grown even bigger?" he added, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. "Because that's what happens when we let love guide our steps." The sound of footsteps interrupted the moment. Helena entered the kitchen carrying an old box. "Sorry to intrude," she said, placing the box on the table. "But I found something you need to see, Clara." Inside the box was a diary, the pages yellowed with age but still perfectly legible. "It was Marina's," Helena explained. "She wrote it during the 6 months she spent studying at the same school in Paris where you are." Clara opened the diary with reverent care. The first page contained a quote that brought tears to her eyes. "Distance does not separate hearts. That cook with love." "Marina was also afraid to leave," Helena continued, her voice soft with memory. "But it was during that time away that she developed many of the recipes that have become special to this family. Longing, she said, was the secret sauce that made each dish more meaningful." Leona and Gaia, who had evidently been eavesdropping, came into the kitchen in their pajamas. "We don't want you to go," Gaia admitted, hugging Clara. "But the teacher said that sometimes we need to let the people we love follow their dreams. And when you get back," Leona added with a mischievous smile, "you can teach us how to make those French pastries that are hard to say the name of." Clara hugged the girls, her heart swelling with love. "I promise to write every day," she said, "and I'll save every new recipe I learn so we can make them together when I get back." "Actually," Raphael cleared his throat, looking slightly nervous, "I've been thinking, the girls have a school break that coincides with their last month in Paris. Maybe we could, to come visit you," the twins added in unison, jumping for joy. Helena smiled, taking Marina's diary. "There's a passage here that you should read. Clara." She flipped through it until she found the right page and read aloud. "Cooking is like love. The more you share it, the more it grows. Every new technique I learn here is one more ingredient in the recipe for the life I want to build with my family." Clara felt tears stream down her face, but they were tears of joy and gratitude. She looked around the kitchen that had become her sanctuary, at the people who had become her family, and knew she was making the right decision. "There's one thing I need to do before I leave," she said, standing up with determination, "and I'm going to need all of your help." In the days that followed, the mansion was filled with a special energy. Clara had decided to organize a charity dinner, using her newfound fame to raise funds for a social project that would teach cooking to underprivileged children, something that her great-grandmother Juliane would certainly approve of. The menu would be a celebration of all the women who had influenced her journey. Appetizers, based on her great-grandmother's healing recipes, main courses inspired by her mother's teachings, and desserts that paid homage to Marina. Each dish would tell a story of love, perseverance, and transformation. Raphael not only supported the idea, but also expanded its scope, inviting businessmen and influential figures. Helena immersed herself in the preparations with an enthusiasm that surprised everyone, sharing stories and recipes that she had saved for years. The twins appointed themselves official assistants, proud to help with the decorations and organizing the menus. Amidst the preparations, Clara found a moment to visit her grandmother, Thalia. "You know, my dear," the lady said, helping her granddaughter pick herbs for dinner. "Your mother always said that you had a special sparkle in your eyes when you cooked. But now I see something more. I see the sparkle of someone who has found her true purpose." Clara hugged her grandmother, breathing in the familiar scent of lavender that always calmed her. "And to think it all started with a simple act of kindness on a rainy morning." "Nothing is simple when it comes to love," Thalia replied with a wise smile. "Every small gesture of kindness is a seed that, planted in the right heart, can blossom into an entire garden of blessings." The night of the charity dinner arrived, transforming the Muller mansion into a dreamlike setting. The garden was lit up with hundreds of tiny lights, like stars fallen from the sky, and elegantly decorated tables stretched across the lawn. The scent of fresh flowers mingled with the perfumes coming from the kitchen, creating a magical atmosphere. Clara, dressed in an elegant midnight blue dress, supervised the final details. Marina's brooch glittered on her chest like a good luck charm. In the kitchen, a team of young aspiring chefs, selected from social programs, worked under her guidance, learning not only techniques, but also the value of love in cooking. "Everything. Fare's perfect," Helena said, appearing in the kitchen doorway. The housekeeper had changed from her usual formal uniform to an elegant pearl-colored dress. Marina would be proud. The twins, dressed as little princesses, ran among the guests who were beginning to arrive, enthusiastically telling the story of how they had met Clara. "And then she gave us the best cake in the world," Leona explained to a group of smiling businessmen. "And now she's going to Paris," Gaia added, "but she'll teach us how to make croissants when she gets back." Raphael watched the scene with a smile on his lips, elegant in his tuxedo. When Clara passed him carrying a tray of canapés, he gently stopped her. "You look stunning," he whispered, making her blush. The dinner was an absolute success. Each dish served was accompanied by a story, narrated by Clara with emotion and gratitude. She spoke about her great-grandmother Juliane, who used herbs and spices to heal not only bodies but spirits. She told her about her mother, who taught her that the true flavor of a dish comes from the love with which it is prepared. And finally, with a voice choked with emotion, he spoke about Marina and the legacy of love she had left in that kitchen. The twins, sitting next to their father, held each other's hands, their eyes shining with tears of pride and longing. When it came time for dessert, Clara unveiled her most special creation, a cake that was a true work of art, decorated with delicate sugar flowers that seemed to dance across the mirrored frosting. "This cake," she explained, "represents our journey. Each layer tells a story of love, loss, and new beginnings." The guests gave a standing ovation, moved not only by the exceptional food, but by the story of transformation and love they had witnessed. The donations to the charity exceeded all expectations, ensuring that many more lives could be transformed through cooking. Later, when most of the guests had left, Clara found a moment of quiet in the garden. The evening air was scented with jasmine, and the full moon bathed everything in its silvery light. "I thought I'd find you here." Raphael's voice sounded soft behind her. "You always come to the garden when you need to think." Clara smiled, turning to face him. "I'm trying to commit every detail to memory, to take with me to Paris." "You know," he began, stepping closer, "there is an old French tradition that says that when two hearts are truly connected, distance only serves to strengthen their bond." Raphael's Clara began, but he gently placed a finger over her lips. "Let me finish," he said softly. "When Marina left, I thought I would never be able to open my heart again. But then you came, with your cake and your generous heart, and you showed my daughters and me that love can take many different forms." Clara felt her heart race as Raphael took her hands in his. "These 3 months in Paris will be an eternity," he continued. "But when you return, I want you to find not only a kitchen waiting for you, but a heart that has learned to love again." At that moment, as if it had been carefully planned by fate, the first drops of gentle rain began to fall. Clara laughed, remembering the morning that had changed her life. "It seems like the rain has perfect timing in our story," she commented, her eyes meeting Raphael's. "Maybe it's a sign," he smiled, gently pulling her closer, "that sometimes we need to allow ourselves to be surprised by life." The kiss that followed was as soft as the falling rain, as sweet as the desserts that Clara prepared with so much love. It was a kiss that spoke of promises, of shared futures, of recipes yet to be created. From one of the mansion's windows, Helena watched the scene with a serene smile. Beside her, the twins whispered excitedly, making plans for when Clara returned from Paris. And somewhere, perhaps not so far away, Marina smiled too, knowing that her family had found a new kind of happiness, one that tasted like cake on a rainy day, the aroma of spiced chocolate, and the sweet and eternal taste of true love. The morning of Clara's departure for Paris dawned with a surprisingly clear sky. The Muller mansion was silent, except for the soft movement in the kitchen, where Clara was preparing her last breakfast before her journey. Her hands moved lovingly among the familiar ingredients, preparing all the family's favorite recipes. "You didn't have to do all this," Helena said, still sleepy, entering the kitchen. but her tone of voice betrayed the emotion contained within. "You should be resting for the journey." "You know I couldn't leave without preparing one last special breakfast," Clara replied, finishing decorating the pancakes with fresh fruit. "Besides, I left several recipes prepared and frozen for you." Helena picked up a thick folder that Clara had meticulously organized over the past few days. Inside, each recipe was explained in detail, with special notes about each family member's preferences. "You've thought of everything," the housekeeper commented, her voice cracking. "Clara!" The twins' voices echoed through the hallway before they themselves burst into the kitchen, still in their pajamas. Leona carried a small package, while Gaia held a decorated notebook. "We made you something to take home," Leona explained, handing over the package. Inside was a small photo album, filled with moments they had shared over the past few months: cooking classes, happy breakfasts, afternoons spent studying in the kitchen. "And this is a special notebook," Gaia added, showing the notebook decorated with colorful drawings, "for you to write down all the new recipes you learn in Paris. But there is one condition: you have to teach us all of them when you get back." Clara hugged the girls, feeling the tears begin to well up. "It's a promise," she whispered, kissing the tops of their heads. Raphael appeared in the kitchen doorway, impeccably dressed as always, but with an expression that mixed pride and anticipatory longing. "The driver will be here in an hour," he said softly. "Shall we have that special breakfast you prepared?" The meal was bittersweet. The twins excitedly told each other about their plans for their visit to Paris, while Helena discreetly wiped her eyes with her napkin. Raphael kept his hand close to Clara's on the table, as if he wanted to absorb every remaining moment. "Before I go," Clara said, standing up, "I have something for you too." She walked over to the oven and pulled out a batch of freshly baked cookies. "These are nostalgia cookies," she explained, handing out little bags decorated with colorful ribbons. "The recipe is special. The more we miss each other, the sweeter they are." "But how is that possible?" Gaia asked, curious. Clara smiled, lightly touching the girl's heart. "It's the magic of love, my dear. It has the power to transform everything it touches." Helena received her bag of cookies along with a tight hug. "Take care of them for me," Clara whispered. The housekeeper nodded, unable to speak due to her emotion. The moment of departure came all too quickly. In the entrance hall, Clara met her grandmother Thalia, who had arrived to say goodbye. "My girl," the lady said, adjusting Marina's brooch on Clara's coat, "go and make your dreams come true. We will be here, cheering you on." Raphael stepped closer, taking Clara's hands in his. 3 months, he said softly. 90 days for you to conquer Paris, and then—" He didn't finish the sentence, but his eyes said everything that words couldn't. At the last moment before getting into the car, Clara ran back to the kitchen. She stopped for a moment, taking in every detail: the aroma of fresh coffee, the sunlight streaming through the windows, Marina's recipe book on the shelf. This space had become much more than just a kitchen. It was a sanctuary of memories, dreams, and love. She lightly touched the counter where she had prepared so many meals, where she had taught the girls to bake cookies, where she had fallen in love not just with cooking, but with an entire family. "Thank you," she whispered to the empty yet somehow full of presents room. When he finally got into the car, he saw the whole family gathered at the entrance to the mansion, the twins waving frantically, Helena maintaining her dignified posture despite her tears, her grandmother Thalia smiling proudly, and Raphael, whose gaze conveyed 1,000 silent promises. The driver started the car, and Clara felt the weight of Marina's brooch on her chest, a constant reminder that sometimes fate takes us far away, only to show us where we truly belong. As the mansion receded in the rearview mirror, she opened the decorated notebook the girls had given her and wrote on the first page, "Recipes for Love, a Paris Diary." The first drop of rain fell on the car window, and Clara smiled. It seemed that the rain really did have perfect timing in her story, no longer a symbol of sadness or farewell, but a promise that, just as plants need rain to grow, sometimes we need to step away in order to bloom even stronger. 3 months passed like a dream in Paris. Clara absorbed every moment, every lesson, every new technique with the same passion with which she prepared her special dishes. Her letters home were filled with stories of perfectly flaky croissants, complex sauces, and centuries-old culinary secrets. For the twins, he sent short videos teaching them simple tricks that they could practice under Helena's supervision. For their grandmother Talia, he photographed the flower gardens and charming cafes that he found on his walks. For Helena, he shared traditional French recipes that he discovered in small family-run bistros. And to Raphael, to him, she wrote, long letters at night after school, telling him not only about her culinary discoveries but about her dreams, fears and hopes. He responded with the same intensity, her words building a bridge across the ocean that separated them. The last month in Paris was special. As planned, Raphael arrived with the girls for a visit that would transform the City of Lights into a setting for magical reunions. Clara was waiting for them at Charles de Gaulle Airport, with a small poster decorated with hearts and drawings of kitchen utensils. "Clara!" the twins cried in unison, running into her arms as soon as they saw her. The hug was long, full of accumulated longing and love. When they finally separated, Clara met Raphael's gaze, 3 months of distance dissolving in a single moment. The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and discoveries. Clara took them to her favorite places, small bakeries where the aroma of fresh bread filled the narrow streets, colorful markets where the freshest products were displayed like works of art, historic restaurants where each dish told a centuries-old story. One afternoon, while the girls slept exhausted in the hotel after a day of exploring, Clara and Raphael walked along the banks of the Seine. The sun was setting, painting the Paris sky in shades of pink and gold. "I have something to tell you," Clara said, stopping near one of the ancient bridges. "I've been invited to be the executive chef of a restaurant here in Paris." Raphael's heart stopped for a moment. "And will you accept?" he asked, his voice trying to mask his apprehension. Clara smiled, taking his hand. "No," she said simply, "because I've found my place in the world, and it's in a kitchen in a certain mansion, with 2 little assistant chefs and a housekeeper who pretends not to be moved by my cakes." Raphael pulled her close, his eyes shining with love and relief. "And with a certain businessman who can no longer imagine his life without the smell of cake in the morning." "Especially with him," Clara replied, before their lips met in a kiss that tasted of promise and future. On her last day in Paris, Clara prepared a special dinner in her small student kitchen. The twins helped decorate the table with flowers bought at the local market, while Raphael opened a wine chosen especially for the occasion. "I have an announcement to make," Clara said, serving dessert, a sophisticated take on her famous chocolate cake. "When we get back, I'm opening a little cafe school." "Really?" the girls asked excitedly. "Yes," Clara continued, her eyes meeting Raphael's, who already knew the plan. "It will be a place where underprivileged children can learn not only to cook, but to transform their lives through cooking. We'll call it Café das Memorias, a Marina project." The twins hugged Clara, overflowing with joy. Raphael watched the scene with teary eyes, thinking about how proud Marina would be to see her legacy of love being continued in such a special way. The next morning, as the plane took off from Paris, Clara looked out the window at the city that had been her temporary home. Marina's brooch glittered on her coat, as always, but now it was not just a symbol of remembrance, it was a reminder that love, like the best recipes, only gets better when shared. In her bag, the notebook decorated by the girls was full of new recipes and techniques, but its pages also held something more precious, the certainty that sometimes we need to travel far to discover that our true destiny has always been in the place where we started. The plane passed through a cloud, and, for a moment, Clara saw her reflection in the window, no longer just a young cook in a small restaurant, but a woman who had found her purpose, her love, her family. And as they flew home, she began to plan the first menu for the Café des Memories, knowing that each dish would be seasoned with the most special ingredient of all, the love that transforms, heals, and unites hearts. The old mansion in the city, Santa had seen better days, But Clara saw beyond the peeling walls and dusty windows. With her hand intertwined with Raphael's, she walked through the empty rooms, her eyes shining with the vision of what this space could become. "Are you sure this is it?" asked Helena, who was accompanying them on the visit. The housekeeper ran, her finger over one of the surfaces, wrinkling her nose at the accumulated dust. "Absolutely," Clara replied, stopping in what would be the kitchen. "Look at that. Large windows for natural light, enough space for multiple workstations, and that door over there. It opens to a garden of herbs and spices." The twins ran around the space, their laughter echoing off the empty walls, already imagining what it would be like when the Memories Cafe was up and running. "Can we have our own workstation?" Leona asked while Gaia was already drawing in the air where the ovens would be. "Of course," Clara smiled. "In fact, you'll be my special assistant on the project. After all, it was thanks to you that it all started." Raphael watched the scene with a smile on his lips, recognizing in Clara's eyes that special sparkle that had first appeared when she had spoken about the project in Paris. "So it's decided," he declared. "We're going to turn this place into the Cafe of Memories." The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Architects, designers, and builders transformed the mansion according to Clara's vision. A space that combined vintage charm with modern functionality. The main kitchen was equipped with the latest technology, while maintaining elements that evoked tradition and hospitality. One afternoon, while supervising the installation of the industrial ovens, Clara received a surprise visit. Mrs. Zaria, the former waitress from the restaurant where it all began, appeared carrying an old box. "I found these treasures in storage," she said, revealing a set of porcelain cups and saucers with delicate floral motifs. "They were from when the restaurant opened over 50 years ago. I thought they might have a special place here." Clara hugged her former colleague, moved. "They will have a place of honor," she assured, "just like you, if you accept to be part of our team. We need someone with experience to train young people in customer service." Mrs. Zaria could not hold back her tears. "Yes, I do, my dear. It will be an honor to be part of this new story." The project grew not only in structure, but in meaning. Clara established partnerships with institutions that worked with vulnerable young people. Every detail was thought out so that the space would not only be a cafe school, but a place of transformation and hope. A special part of the cafe was dedicated to the memory of the women who inspired the project. On one wall, old photos told silent stories. Great-grandmother Julianne in her modest kitchen, Clara's mother teaching her to make her first cake, Marina with her twins as babies, all connected by the invisible thread of love through cooking. Helena, who had initially been skeptical about the project, became one of the most enthusiastic contributors. Her management experience and attention to detail were invaluable. More than that, she brought with her a treasure, old recipes of Marina's that she had saved all these years. "I found this special notebook," she said one afternoon, handing Clara a leather-bound volume. Marina started writing in it. When she found out she was expecting twins, these are recipes she created with the future in mind, for special moments she wanted to share with her daughters. Clara flipped through the notebook reverently, noting the loving notes in the margins. For the first day of school, to heal a broken heart, to celebrate accomplishments. Each recipe was more than a list of ingredients. It was an expression of motherly love. "This notebook will be our guide," Clara decided. "Every young person who passes through here will learn not only culinary techniques, but the value of love as the main ingredient." As the opening date approached, the mansion came to life. The walls, now in soft shades of yellow and green, seemed to smile. The herb garden flourished under the dedicated care of Thalia, who spent hours sharing her knowledge of medicinal plants with the young apprentices. The twins had taken their role as special assistants seriously. After school, they would rush to help with the organization, labeling jars of ingredients, arranging aprons, and most importantly, filling the room with their infectious joy. One evening, after a long day of preparations, Clara found Raphael waiting for her in the cafe garden. The first stars were beginning to appear in the sky, and the scent of fresh herbs filled the air. "Can you believe we're almost there?" she asked, leaning against him. Raphael hugged her from behind, his chin resting gently on her shoulder. "Can believe anything when it comes to you," he replied. "You have the gift of turning dreams into reality." Clara turned to face him, her eyes shining with tears of happiness. "Do you know what moves me the most? It's seeing how this project is bringing people together, creating a new family. Every young person who comes here will have the chance to discover their own worth, just as I did that rainy morning. And to think that it all started with two little runaways in search of adventure," Raphael smiled, referring to the twins. "Actually," Clara corrected gently, "it began with love, and it is with love that we will continue writing this story." Indeed. The silence of the garden under the starry sky, Clara felt the familiar weight of Marina's brooch on her chest. It was as if all the women who had inspired that project were there, blessing each new chapter of this story that was just beginning. The morning of the inauguration of Café das Memorias dawned with a clear sky and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of herbs from the garden. Clara had arrived before sunrise, her experienced hands preparing every detail of the special breakfast that would mark the beginning of this new journey. In the main kitchen, the young apprentices, dressed in new uniforms, worked with dedication and enthusiasm. Clara watched them with pride. Each of them had a story of overcoming obstacles, and now they were here, ready to write a new chapter in their lives. "It smells divine," Thalia exclaimed, walking into the kitchen leaning on her new cane. Clara's grandmother had insisted on arriving early to bless the space with her silent prayers and special aromatic herbs. Helena arrived shortly after, carrying fresh flour, arrangements that perfectly complemented the cafe's vintage decor. The housekeeper, who had initially resisted the idea of the project, was now one of the biggest enthusiasts, even suggesting several of the decorative elements that harked back to Marina's era. The twins arrived with Raphael, all three, carrying little surprises. Leona and Gaia had prepared welcome cards for each table, decorated with colorful drawings and loving messages. Raphael brought with him a special gift, a bronze plaque that would be placed at the entrance to the café. Café das Memorias, un progetto Marina, where each recipe tells a love story, Clara read aloud, her eyes welling up at the inscription on the sign. "It's perfect." As the opening hour approached, the café came to life. The tables, decorated with Senora Zaria's antique cups and small vases of flowers from the garden, seemed to invite visitors to special moments. The aroma of fresh bread and freshly brewed coffee filled the room. The first guests began to arrive, family members of the young apprentices, representatives of partner institutions, local journalists, and, to Clara's surprise, several of her former teachers from Paris, who had made a point of coming to honor their former student. "Mademoiselle Clara," said Professor Beatrice, who had encouraged her to participate in the contest that had changed her life, "this is extraordinary. You have managed to create something unique, a space that not only teaches gastronomy, but transforms lives." Clara proudly introduced her team of young apprentices, each sharing a little bit of their story and their dreams. The twins, in their little personalized aprons, helped serve the guests with a grace that made everyone smile. The most emotional moment came when Clara gathered everyone for a special toast. In each glass, an infusion of herbs from the garden, prepared according to an old recipe from her great-grandmother Juliane. "This place," she began, her voice thick with emotion, "was born from a dream shared by many extraordinary women. My great-grandmother Juliane, who used cooking to heal bodies and souls. My mother, who taught me that love is the most important ingredient in any recipe. And Marina," she paused, touching the brooch on her chest, "who left a legacy of love that continues to inspire and transform lives." Raphael approached, holding her hand affectionately. The twins stood next to them, forming a scene that made several guests hide their tears. "But this place is more than a cafe or a school," Clara continued. "It's a place of transformation, where every person who comes here will have the chance to discover not only their love of cooking, but their own self-worth." Helena, who rarely showed emotion in public, couldn't hold back her tears when Clara called her to receive a special thank you. "Without you, Helena, this dream wouldn't be possible. You not only kept Marina's memories all these years, but you taught me how to honor them in the most beautiful way possible, keeping your love alive through new stories. The day unfolded like a dream. The young apprentices demonstrated their newly acquired skills, serving dishes that blended classic techniques with personal stories. Each recipe had a special meaning. Each presentation carried a piece of soul. Late in the afternoon, as the last guests were saying their goodbyes, Clara found a moment of stillness in the herb garden. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold that reminded her of her afternoons in Paris. Raphael found her there, as he always did in important moments. "Happy?" he asked, hugging her from behind. "More than happy," Clara replied, turning to face him. "I'm complete. You know, I spent so much time searching for my place in the world, and now I realize it wasn't a place I was looking for. It was a purpose." The twins joined them in the garden, followed by Helena, Thalia, and the entire cafe staff. Together, they watched the sky transform, marking the end of a special day and the beginning of a new journey. Café das Memorias was officially open, ready to be not just an establishment, but a place where dreams would be cultivated, lives would be transformed, and love, in all its forms, would always be the main ingredient. 6 months after the opening of Café das Memorias, autumn was painting the city with golden hues, and the aroma of cinnamon and spices was escaping through the windows of the renovated mansion. The project had blossomed beyond the most optimistic expectations. Every morning, a line formed at the doctor, people eager to taste not only the exceptional food, but to absorb the special atmosphere that Clara and her team had created.